I still remember the smell of oak wood in my father's workshop. I was 8 years old watching him shape a piece of timber into something beautiful. He let me hold the sandpaper, and I felt like the luckiest kid in the world. That workshop was my playground, my classroom, my dream. I believed one day it would be mine. But there was something I did not understand back then. Love in a family is not always divided equally. Before I continue this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. If you have ever felt overlooked by your own family, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Stay with me, because what my parents did next changed everything I believed about family loyalty. My name is Stanley, and I grew up in a small town in Ohio. My father, Richard, built Harrison Furniture Company from nothing 30 years ago. He started with a small workshop in our garage and turned it into a business with 40 employees and about $3 million in annual revenue. I watched that transformation happen. I was part of it. When I was 16 years old, I started working at the company. Not because my father forced me. I wanted to be there. I swept floors. I organized inventory. I learned how to operate every single machine in that workshop. By the time I was 18, I could build a dining table from scratch without any supervision. My younger brother Derek was different. He was 3 years younger than me, and he had zero interest in sawdust and wood stain. While I spent my summers at the workshop, Derek spent his at the pool with his friends. While I learned about profit margins and customer relationships, Derek learned about parties and video games. Our parents never pushed him. They said he was still young. They said he needed to enjoy his childhood. I went to college for business administration. I chose a school close to home so I could continue working at the company part-time. I turned down a scholarship at a university 3 states away because I wanted to stay and help my father grow the business. That decision made sense to me. The company was my future. At least, that is what I believed. After graduation, I had offers from 3 different corporations. Good salaries, benefits, room for advancement. I turned them all down. My father needed me. The company needed me. I became the operations manager, handling everything from supply chain logistics to employee scheduling. I proposed expanding into online sales when e-commerce was just starting to grow. My father dismissed the idea. He said our customers preferred the traditional way. I suggested improving our production process to reduce waste. I implemented changes that saved the company 20% in material costs. My father nodded, said good job, and never mentioned it again. Derek, meanwhile, enrolled in a marketing program at a university in California. He never finished. After 2 years, he dropped out and spent another year trying to find himself on the West Coast. Our parents sent him money every month. They said he was going through a phase. They said he would figure things out eventually. Then came the night of my father's 60th birthday. We had a family dinner at my parents' house. My mother, Linda, cooked pot roast, my father's favorite. The atmosphere felt different that evening, more formal, more deliberate. After dessert, my father cleared his throat and made an announcement. He said he was thinking about retirement. Not immediately, but within the next few years. He wanted to start planning the transition. I sat up straighter. This was the moment I had been preparing for my entire adult life. 15 years of dedication were about to pay off. But my father did not look at me when he talked about the future. He spoke in general terms. He mentioned challenges ahead. He talked about fresh perspectives. Then my mother said something that made my stomach drop. She looked at Derek, who had just returned to Ohio 2 months earlier, and said that maybe Derek should start learning about the company too. Derek smiled. He was wearing a designer suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. He started talking about vision and innovation and brand identity. Words that sounded impressive but meant nothing. He had never built a single piece of furniture in his life. My father looked at Derek with pride in his eyes. It was a look I had never received. Not after 15 years. Not after all the sacrifices. Not after turning down every opportunity that could have taken me away from that company. I told myself I was overthinking. After all, I had given 15 years to this company. Surely that meant something. But I was wrong. 6 months later, my father called another family meeting. This time it was not about future plans. It was about immediate changes. He announced that Derek would be joining the company in a newly created position. The title was Director of Business Development. The salary was 40% higher than mine. I sat there in silence as my father explained his decision. Derek had new ideas. Derek had energy. Derek could take the company in exciting new directions. I asked my father for a private conversation after the meeting. I reminded him of everything I had done. 15 years, countless late nights, holidays spent fixing problems. I asked him why Derek was starting at a higher level than me. My father put his hand on my shoulder and said something I will never forget. He said that I was already established. I was doing fine. Derek was the one who needed support. Derek was the one who needed a chance to prove himself. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask what exactly Derek had ever done to deserve this chance. But I kept my composure. I nodded. I went back to work. Derek started the following Monday. Within his first month, he signed a contract with a new lumber supplier. He did not consult anyone. He did not check references. He just saw that the prices were lower and signed the deal. The first shipment arrived 6 weeks later. The wood was garbage, warped planks, inconsistent grain, moisture damage. We had to scrap 70% of it. Our production schedule fell behind. Customers started complaining. Orders got delayed. I worked 80-hour weeks trying to fix the damage. I called our old suppliers and begged them to expedite emergency orders. I personally inspected every piece of lumber that came through our doors. When I finally reported the full extent of the problem to my father, he shrugged. He said everyone makes mistakes when they are learning. He said I should be more supportive of my brother. Derek never apologized. Instead, he blamed the production team for not adapting to the new materials. He blamed me for not catching the issue sooner. My parents believed him. The pattern continued. A major client requested a meeting to discuss a large contract. Derek insisted on leading the presentation. I spent 3 nights preparing materials, creating samples, gathering data. Derek showed up in an expensive suit and talked about synergy and market positioning. The client asked technical questions about wood types and construction methods. Derek stumbled. He looked at me with panic in his eyes. I stepped in and answered every question. I saved that deal. After the meeting, my father congratulated Derek on handling the pressure so well. He did not mention my name. That evening, my mother called me. She said I needed to be more supportive of Derek. She said I was making him look bad. She said families should stick together. I hung up the phone and sat in my car for an hour, staring at nothing. A week later, Thomas pulled me aside. Thomas was 55 years old and had worked with my father since the beginning. He was the production manager, and he was the closest thing I had to a mentor in that company. Thomas did not mince words. He told me he had watched my father for 30 years. He had seen how my father looked at me compared to how he looked at Derek. He said I was not the chosen one. I never had been. I tried to argue. I listed my accomplishments. I mentioned my sacrifices. Thomas shook his head. He said talent and loyalty did not matter to some people. He said I was young and capable. He told me not to waste my life waiting for recognition that would never come. That night, I went home and told my wife Grace everything. Grace and I had been married for 4 years. She had watched my family dynamics from the outside, and she had a clearer view than I did. Grace held my hands and looked me in the eyes. She said she had been observing my family for 7 years since we first started dating. She said they had never truly seen me. She said they had never valued what I brought to the table. Then she asked me the question that changed my life. She asked what I would do if they gave the company to Derek. I realized I had never considered that possibility. Not seriously. I'd always assumed that hard work would eventually be rewarded. I had no backup plan, no alternative vision for my future. Grace squeezed my hands tighter. She told me I had talent that existed independently of my father's company. She told me not to let them define my worth. That night, I started researching. I read about starting a business. I took online courses about entrepreneurship. I studied market gaps in the furniture industry. I did all of this in secret late at night while still working 80 hours a week at my father's company. The meeting took place on a Sunday afternoon in my parents' living room. My father stood by the fireplace. My mother sat on the couch, hands folded in her lap. Derek lounged in an armchair looking relaxed. My father announced that he was officially retiring. Effective immediately, he had made his decision about the future of Harrison Furniture Company. I braced myself. 15 years of memories flashed through my mind. Every sacrifice, every late night, every moment I chose the company over my own ambitions. My father said he was transferring full ownership and control to Derek. He said Derek had the fresh vision that the company needed for the next chapter. He said this was the best decision for everyone. I felt the room spin. 15 years of my life dismissed in a single sentence. Derek grinned and shook my father's hand like he had just won a championship trophy. My mother smiled with tears in her eyes, proud of her youngest son. Then my mother turned to me. She said she knew I would continue supporting Derek. She said I understood the company better than anyone. She said Derek would need my help. Everyone waited for my response. They expected me to accept. They expected me to fall in line like I always had. I stood up slowly. My voice was calm but firm. I told them I understood their decision. My parents relaxed. They thought I was accepting my role as second best. Then I continued. I told them I would not be staying to support Derek. I told them I was leaving the company. The room went silent. Derek's smile disappeared. My mother's face turned pale. My father's expression shifted from surprise to anger. My father accused me of threatening the family. He demanded to know if this was some kind of power play. I looked him directly in the eyes. I told him this was not a threat. I told him I was finally respecting myself, something they had never done. I walked out of that house without looking back. The next 3 months were the hardest of my life. I used my savings and took out a small business loan to rent a workshop space on the other side of town. I named my company Hartwell Custom Woodworks, using Grace's maiden name. I wanted a fresh start, a clean break. In the beginning, it was just me, Grace, and my best friend, Marcus. Grace handled the books. Marcus helped with deliveries and installations. I did everything else: design, production, sales, customer service. I focused on custom high-end furniture, pieces tailored to individual clients. This was a market segment that Harrison Furniture had always ignored. My father believed in volume. I believed in craftsmanship. The first year was brutal. Revenue barely covered expenses. I worked 100-hour weeks. There were nights when I questioned every decision I had made. There were moments when I wanted to call my father and apologize, just to make things easier. But Grace was always there. She reminded me why I left. She reminded me what I was building. The second year, things started to change. Word spread about the quality of my work. Clients recommended me to their friends. Interior designers started calling. I hired 5 employees. I expanded the workshop. I implemented every idea my father had rejected. Online sales, digital marketing, a customer experience that made people feel valued. I built relationships instead of just transactions. By the third year, Hartwell Custom Woodworks was generating $2 million in annual revenue. A local business magazine featured my story. They called me a rising star in the regional furniture industry. Then Thomas called me. He said he had retired from Harrison Furniture. He said he wanted to work with someone who actually appreciated his experience. He asked if I had room for an old man who still knew his way around a workshop. I hired him that same day. While my company grew, Harrison Furniture crumbled. Derek fired most of the experienced employees and replaced them with his friends, people who had never built anything in their lives. He spent company money on a fancy new office and expensive company cars. He neglected equipment maintenance. He ignored customer complaints. Quality plummeted. Long-time clients took their business elsewhere. Some of them came to me. Derek borrowed money to keep the company afloat. Then he borrowed more and more. Within 4 years, Harrison Furniture was drowning in debt. Over $800,000 owed to banks and suppliers. The company that my father spent 30 years building was on the verge of collapse. Then my phone rang. It was my father's number. I had not spoken to him in 4 years. His voice sounded different, smaller. The confidence and authority were gone. He asked if I could come home. He said the company needed me. He said we were family. I listened without interrupting. Then I asked him one question. I asked where this family was 4 years ago when I needed them. He did not have an answer. 2 days later, my mother called. She was crying. She begged me to help Derek. She said he was struggling. She said he was depressed. She said he needed his big brother. I asked her if she remembered calling me 4 years ago to tell me I was not being supportive enough of Derek. I asked her if she remembered whose side she chose. She cried harder but could not respond. That night, I sat with Grace in our living room. Our 2-year-old daughter was asleep upstairs. I told Grace about the phone calls. I asked her what she thought I should do. Grace was quiet for a long moment. Then she said that whatever I decided, she would support me. But she reminded me of something important. She said I did not owe them anything, not after everything they had done. I thought about it all night. I thought about the boy who used to dream of running his father's company. I thought about the man who was discarded like he meant nothing. I thought about the empire I had built with my own hands. The next morning, I made my decision. I sent a package to my parents' house. Inside was a collection of brochures about small business loan programs, information about debt restructuring, resources for struggling companies. I included a short note. It said these were the resources I had to find on my own 4 years ago. I told them I hoped the information would be helpful to them. There was no phone call after that. No response, no reconciliation. Some people might call that cold, but I call it freedom. 6 years have passed since I walked out of my parents' house. Hartwell Custom Woodworks now employs 50 people. Our annual revenue reached $5 million last year. We have clients across 12 states. Thomas is my senior production advisor. Marcus is my business partner. Grace still handles the finances, though now she manages a team of 3 accountants. My daughter is 7 years old now. Her little brother is 4. They have never met their grandparents on my side. They do not know about Harrison Furniture or Uncle Derek. Maybe someday I will tell them, when they are old enough to understand. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Harrison Furniture was sold 2 years ago, liquidated for pennies on the dollar. Derek works somewhere as a salesman now. I do not know the details. I do not ask. My parents still live in the same house in Ohio. I hear they are healthy. I hope they are happy. I genuinely do. But that chapter of my life is closed. The first few months after I left were painful. I will not pretend otherwise. There were nights when the sense of betrayal felt overwhelming. There were moments when I wanted to call my father and demand answers. Why was I not enough? What did Derek have that I lacked? Why did 15 years of loyalty mean nothing? But I learned something important during those dark months. Seeking validation from people who refuse to see your worth is a battle you cannot win. The only recognition that truly matters is the recognition you give yourself. Grace helped me understand that. Marcus helped me believe it. Thomas helped me prove it. I built new relationships. I joined local business associations. I mentored young entrepreneurs. I created a family that was not bound by blood, but by mutual respect and genuine care. I stopped being angry at my parents. Anger is exhausting. It poisons your heart and clouds your judgment. I chose to let it go, not for their sake, for mine. Looking back, I realized something that would have seemed impossible 6 years ago. I'm grateful for what happened, not for the pain, not for the betrayal, but for the push it gave me. If my father had handed me the company, I would have spent my life running someone else's dream. I would have been comfortable, but never fulfilled. I would have been successful by someone else's definition, but never truly free. Instead, I built something of my own. Every success belongs to me. Every failure teaches me. Every decision reflects my values. Family is not just about blood. It is about who shows up for you when things get hard. It is about who believes in you when you struggle to believe in yourself. It is about who stands beside you, not because they have to, but because they choose to. Your worth is not determined by whether others recognize it. Some people will never see what you bring to the table no matter how many times you prove yourself. That is their limitation, not yours. Letting go is not giving up. Sometimes letting go is the bravest and healthiest thing you can do. I used to dream about running my father's company. Now I realize that dream was too small. I do not run my father's company. I run my own. And that is worth more than any inheritance could ever be. If you are watching this and you are in a similar situation, feeling overlooked and undervalued by the people who should love you most, I want you to remember something. The door they close on you might be the door you needed to walk away from all along. Sometimes rejection is redirection. Sometimes losing what you thought you wanted is how you find what you actually need. Now I have a question for you. Have you ever had to walk away from family expectations to find your own path? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find this channel. And if you're new here, subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next story. Share this video with someone who might need to hear this message today. You never know whose life you might change. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And remember, your worth does not depend on whether anyone else sees it. Take care of yourselves. I will see you in the next one.